This is the world's oldest football, and these are the world's oldest football boots. And they're one of the many things we'll be testing out in this video to see what it was like to be a professional footballer in the 1800s. Starting with the kit. So players would often wear a flat cap in the earliest days of football and like a smart shirt on top, because football back then was referred to as the gentleman's game. They'd wear a pair of baggy long shorts with the socks tucked in. So the only thing remotely similar to now is the long socks. But the difference is back then is that they didn't wear shin pads underneath. Then the icing on the cake, we have the football. So this is famously renowned for its brown hard leather design, and this stuff is just super heavy compared to a new modern training kit, which is super light and comfy. I haven't even touched the football yet and I already just feel like I'm better at football. So out of curiosity, I weighed the old and the new kits, and the old kit was almost double the weight. So let's see how this affects my performance. So my first challenge is to hit the top bins. Let's see how long it takes in the new kit compared to, well, if I can even do it in this old kit. Right, I don't really think these boots are designed for a curl, so I'm just gonna have to go for a toe poke. Oh my gosh, I feel like Bigfoot in these. All right, top bins. I do this in my sleep.
Nope.
Oh, the difference already is crazy. Right, let's switch up the technique. Oh, this is real old school football. And on my second attempt in the new kit, the contest was already over. Oh, yes, as easy as that. But meanwhile, in my old kit, I was still working out what technique they even used back in the day. Oh!
Nope.
Oh my days! Oh my gosh, you're kidding me. Oh my days, this is actually killing me. If you saw the blister on my foot right now, oh. But I just had to keep going, and after a lot of pain, I finally managed to secure the top bins in the 1800s kit. Yes! So I've lost count of how many tries that took in the end, but we managed to get there eventually. I don't think there were many top bins goals back in the 1800s for a reason, so that's 1-0 to modern football. Now, as you may have noticed, this probably took me less time because of the pitch condition as well. These days, we're lucky enough to have all-weather AstroTurf pitches, which leads to less bubbles of the ball, clear pitch markings, and corner flags. But back in the day, games were often played in poor muddy conditions due to low pitch maintenance. But not only that, pitches were way bigger, at around 200 yards long and around 100 yards wide, which is almost twice the size of pitches that we play on now. But there wasn't much consistency to this, because it was basically down to whoever was in charge of the match to decide who laid jumpers or stones down as pitch markings. This of course led to a lot of disputes as to whether the ball was actually in or out of play. So on paper, it's probably clear to see that pitches nowadays are a lot better. But to actually gain a point, let's put it to the test with a touch challenge. So the ball was fizzed into me and I had 3 attempts to touch the ball into the marked area on both pitches. Oh, that's 3. Oh. Ooh, okay. And that's another point to modern football. So the next category of football we're going to compare is rules. Now, in my hand is the first ever official rulebook of football from 1863. And they're certainly a lot different to the rules we have now. And fun fact, I'm actually standing outside the Freemasons Tavern in London where these rules were first written. But what did they decide? So I think the biggest surprise is the rule about goals. So far, I've been testing the kit out with an old-fashioned style net. But if we roll back things to the day this book was written, they state that 2 upright poles must be used as the goal, placed 8 yards apart with no tape or bar between them. So shooting the ball wide was no goal, and shooting the ball between the posts was a goal. That's the same as today, but the craziest difference back then was if you shot the ball between the posts at any height, this counted as a goal. In 1875, the rules changed so that a crossbar could be used with tape. Then in 1883, it was required that an actual crossbar must be used between the 2 posts, which led to the birth of the crossbar challenge. The next biggest difference in rules back in the earliest versions of football was that players could catch the ball. Yep, you heard that right. The rules state that a player may make a catch when intercepting the ball, but the player must then drop the ball to their feet and not carry the ball. Rule number 3, after every goal, teams must change ends. I don't know why this was the case, but with pitches being almost double the size back then, this must have been a nightmare. So the next rule difference is about game time. Back then, there was no official set game time like the 90 minutes that we have now. So the game simply ended when the person in charge had had enough. To be fair, this one can actually make sense if the game's just completely one-sided and there's no point in carrying on. But potentially with the introduction of goal difference now in leagues, maybe that was a factor in implementing a fair game time across the board. Up next, the rule stated that you could only pass the ball backwards. Passing the ball forwards meant your teammate was offside and was not allowed. It looks like the offside rule has always been controversial from the dawn of time. Now, when we're talking about these rules, as crazy as they seem to us, we do imagine a ref to be making sure they're adhered to. Well, here's what's even crazier. Back then, refs didn't even exist, as it was simply expected that the two team captains would make sure that the rules were being followed. Imagine that now if Messi and Ronaldo had to rev the game together. Crazy. Now, although these rules sound a bit crazy, they seem kind of fun. And with the games gone now with VAR and the constant stopping and starting of the game, I kind of prefer the sound of the old rules. So for this round, I'm going to give old football the point. Now, up next, we're going to be taking a look at free kicks and how they've changed. Now, this is interesting because what we learned earlier about players being able to catch the ball links to free kicks. Back in the day, if a player caught the ball and then dug a mark in the ground with his foot, a free kick was allowed to be played. Compared to nowadays where you have to be fouled, then beat a wall, this makes scoring free kicks a lot harder. But shooting with these boots isn't easy. So whichever scenario I manage to score a free kick quickest in, modern or old school, wins the point for this round. So my first free kick didn't go so well in the 1800s kit. I hit a nice effort in the modern kit, but the wall was making it a lot harder to score.
Nope.
Oh, that's a stinger that. I think I'm starting to find my technique with these boots. But back in the day, they didn't have techniques like this. Oh no, maybe old school just is the best school. And on my next attempt, I managed to score in the 1800s kit. Yes! It then took me a few more goes to hit the net in the modern kit. And after hitting the post a few times, I finally got there. But that's another point to 1800s football. Up next, we're going to be taking a look at throw-ins. And to be honest, back then, it sounded like absolute chaos. So basically, whoever got to the ball first won the throw-in, regardless of which team it came off last. Then whichever player won the throw-in could then proceed to throw it however they liked. Although with the pitch being a lot bigger, this kind of makes sense. Now with this one, nowadays I have to say that throw-ins seem a lot better, because back in the day it was essentially just a race to the ball, causing a lot of injury and just pure chaos, which led to this rule being changed eventually to what we have now. And I think this should stay, so I think I'm going to have to give this point to modern football. But can 1800s football pull it back going into our next round, where we'll be taking a look at goalkeeping? Firstly, the goalkeeper could protect his goal with his hands at any point on the pitch. So you could just be running forward with the ball at around the halfway line, and you see the goalkeeper running out towards you, and he can just stop the ball with his hands. Not only this, but attackers could use their feet to get goalies back. Kicking the ball out of the goalie's hand was allowed as long as the goalkeeper only had one hand on the ball. This rule also eventually got abolished because it was just causing too many injuries. However, I think the biggest change in goalkeeping was the introduction of goalie gloves. Back in the day, goalies just used to use their bare hands. So although I'm not looking forward to this, let's test it out.
Hey, this is actually really hard to kick, even with normal boots.
Yeah, tell me about it. Scared to go for it again, my hands there, so had to give it a shin. Now, although using goalie gloves is obviously more comfortable and less painful, I didn't actually notice too much difference in my ability to save the ball without them. The grass surface is harder to shoot on though for Luke, and that 1800s ball just flies if you've got any sort of power onto it. Yes! So out of the 5 shots in each, I actually ended up saving more shots with my bare hands. Nothing I can do about that, even if I was any good. So although I don't really want to, I guess that's a point awarded to 1800s football. Up next, we'll be taking a look at how skills compare and how they've evolved. The around the world was invented in 1964, and a lot of circus performers would actually utilise football skills in their performances. But skills weren't really used in football matches until Johan Cruyff introduced his famous Cruyff turn in 1974, which changed the game forever, then leading to more players being creative and trying different skills to beat defenders, with skills such as stepovers, then more advanced skills such as the roulette and rainbow flick in more recent times. So obviously skills are way better and more exciting these days, but to be honest, doing skills in this kit would seriously limit the amount of stuff you could do. But just to make sure, I'm going to see how many attempts it takes for me to do my best freestyle skill in the old kit. And well, if I can even do it compared to the modern kit. I feel like these trousers are going to split.
Nope.
No chance. First time. That's a point to modern football. So now we're on to our final round of the video, where we'll be looking at the most exciting part of football, scoring and everything around it. With the points at 4-3 to modern football, can old school football bring it back with this one? So obviously nowadays there's so many more shooting techniques that can be used compared to the simple toe punt in the 1800s. And there's loads more celebrations to go with it. You can often see players doing choreographed celebrations that they've planned before their match with their teammate, and things to just entertain the crowd. Back in the early days of football, players would just jump up and down, which is a bit boring. But looking at what we learned earlier with having to swap sides after every goal, I suppose you didn't really have time to celebrate. Now this one's a topic for debate because some people like the new entertaining celebrations and some people don't. But me personally, I just think football should be fun and entertaining. So I'm gonna have to give this point to the modern day celebrations, crowning modern day football the champion. What a long way football has come, and long may it continue.